Hello and welcome back to No Limit. It's been a while since we've dropped into this game, but today I'm going to be going through some of y'all's comments from the previous No Limit video and talk about some of the things that y'all want to see most in the next update. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right into them. Now, this first comment kind of goes a little bit into a couple of different things we've been seeing discussions about in the No Limit community lately, and that is with the addition of some of these new cars that are obviously going to have different drive types, we're going to need different classes, like a front-wheel drive class, and maybe even later on down the road, maybe even an all-wheel drive class would be nice to have as well. Now, I know that there's people that are worried about all-wheel drive being introduced to the game, and people that are like, well, if all-wheel drive is introduced to the game, then it'll create a dynamic that maybe you don't want. And I think that that might be from people having prior experiences where all-wheel drive was kind of, to a certain extent, almost abused because it had just more mechanical grip than every other drive type in the game. And I can see why people don't want anything to go that direction. But at the same time, if it was in its own class, I don't really think it would be an issue. And another thing, of course, that was mentioned in that comment was diesels. And this basically always comes up, and I don't really know how to address it other than the fact that the devs haven't really said anything confirming or denying the existence of diesels in a future update. So I don't really think we can talk much more about them without it just being pure speculation with no basis. And another thing I see people asking for on a pretty regular basis is bikes, but at the same time, I don't really know if we'd be able to make bikes happen in a way that would kind of fit into this game's already existing framework well enough. I mean, y'all can let me know what you think on that in the comments down below, of course. But I feel like bikes have always been one of those things in relation to this game that people have always said they wanted in terms of content, but I don't know if a bunch of people would actually use them. And I think it would come down to how they were executed, right? It would come down to how they were developed, it would come down to how they feel, and it would come down to how, of course, they play in the game, because that's what's ultimately going to make people use them or not. And I think really at the end of the day, bikes are something that is, I feel like they would almost, in some ways, I feel like they would almost make a different game for that. Now, whether or not there would be an entirely different game for bikes is not any kind of, do not take that as any kind of confirmation. Because if you take that as some kind of confirmation for another game, it's not gonna go well for you. Just gonna let you know on that. Now, this next comment thread actually kind of got me a little bit interested and kind of intrigued because it ended with someone saying they wanted a Honda Civic rock crawler in Off-Road Outlaws. And I'm like, I mean, I guess technically both of these games are running on similar game engines, and we've seen them share models before. And so I'm like, I mean, it doesn't technically mean it would happen or that it would ever happen, but like, I mean, the fact that someone even was like, hang on a minute, I want this, kind of made me go nuts in my brain, because I was like, hold on, there's no way. Initially, I was like, there's no way anybody's going to want this or bring it up. And then somebody brought it up, and then more people doubled down on it. And as more people continued to double down on it, I started thinking about it more and more. And I was like, there's no way. There's what? Like a Honda Civic rock crawler? Are you nuts? Probably. But like, I don't know. I mean, does it matter if it's a nuts idea or not? Some of the greatest ideas that have ever come up in any of these games kind of came out of the middle of nowhere. So like, while I don't think there's really much chance at all of that Civic model ending up in Off-Road Outlaws, I mean, would I build one? Absolutely, I would build one. Are you kidding? And at the end of the day, who knows? I mean, maybe there is more of a market for like wacky, crazy, out there vehicles in Off-Road Outlaws 2. I mean, like, not 2 as in like, you know, the number 2 or like, you know, but I meant like 2 as in addition to. Because I mean, some of the most commonly used vehicles in Off-Road Outlaws to this day are really just memes. So if you're gonna have like meme builds, you might as well lean into it, right? I mean, if you want to have people building serious vehicles and just, like if you're someone, I guess that would be the better way to say it. If you're someone that only builds like realistic stuff, realism focused vehicles, that's entirely fine. And I completely understand your want for doing that. But at the same time, I feel like there's an entire part of the Off-Road Outlaws community, and to an extent, there's that part of the community in No Limit as well, that I think just likes to build like stuff for the memes. And I think that part of the community is freaking hilarious, and I think it makes these games a lot better because it's there. But I mean, let me know in the comments down below. I mean, if that Civic ended up in Off-Road Outlaws, would you use it? And if you would, what would you turn it into? But let's move on from memes and Honda Civic monster trucks, or at least the potential for them, and talk about how a lot of people are just generally excited for the next No Limit update because of the inclusion of more imports. And we know that there's going to be a variety, because we're not going to get an update like this without variety. Because I feel like if we did get an update like this and there wasn't any variety and it was just like, 4 or 5 different versions of the exact same thing, I feel like it would be like, what was the point? Like, what was the point of having that as an update to begin with? And so going into this update, I know that there's a lot that I want to see. I mean, I want to see, at least when it comes to front wheel drive import stuff, I want to see obviously the Civics, but I would also love to see a CRX. I would love to see a Celica. I would love to see a lot of different cars in that front wheel drive category. But like, there's also that really deep catalog of rear wheel drive imports where you have things like 240SXs. You have things like also the Nissan 300ZX. And I feel like if they wanted to draw from a particular manufacturer's catalog, Nissan has a good one. And then, of course, when you open the floodgates to all-wheel drive cars, you get everything from, say, for example, Subaru WRX, Subaru STI. You get the entire Mitsubishi Evo lineup. You get things like, say, for example, the Eclipse and the Talon, and all of these different cars that really kind of defined that era of all-wheel drive performance that a lot of people are still developing to this day on those same chassis. So I think that there's, again, so much depth there and so much like resource to draw from that they really could do, like, they really could take this game to such an incredible level. And not that it isn't already there, but I do still think there's a lot more that they could do with this game. And I think that if they just keep evolving it over and over and over and adding more and more and more content, I feel like there's just going to be more and more reasons for the community to continue to stick around with this game. And there were some people in the comments of one of my previous No Limit videos that said like they thought like the developers were killing the game or something. And I'm like, that's like so far from the exact opposite of what the dev team is doing for this game. I mean, this and Off-Road Outlaws have basically just been consistent evolutions over time. And when you have games that just continually evolve and evolve and evolve over time like these, I think you're definitely going to have some where, yeah, there's going to be periods of downtime. But when you have periods of downtime, I feel like that just means you're leading into another really big update, which is exactly what I think the next No Limit update is going to end up turning into. Because again, when they're adding a whole new drive type into the game, and not to mention a whole new drive type, but like new engines that we also already know about, there's a lot of work that they have to do behind the scenes. And I really, really deeply hope that we get some different sounds for the cars, because now I'm sure that we will, because I don't think they're going to have a, like a built V8 soundtrack coming out of a front wheel drive Honda Civic. I would be very shocked if that was the case. But like, I also hope that they use a really good sound sample for the Civic, because, I mean, contrary to popular belief, there are some Honda Civics out there that do sound pretty good. They sound a lot better when you put turbos on them. But even then, I mean, I feel like there's obviously going to forever exist the meme of like, oh, there goes, a buzzing, ear-splitting Honda Civic. But at the end of the day, I just genuinely hope that this update turns out to be one of the best ones that we've seen throughout the entire course of this game's lifespan. And I think it's going to do it. I think it's really going to be one of the most interesting updates we've seen so far. The main reason being because it's going to have a ton of depth with what it's adding to the game. There's going to be so much added depth that I think really the biggest thing too is going to be figuring out the tuning for all of the front wheel drive stuff, because that in itself is going to be a whole new battle. But if y'all enjoyed this video in No Limit Drag Racing 2.0, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all next time. Talk to y'all later. Hope y'all enjoyed.